I'm a relatively uninteresting man in my late 20s with a stable job and a happy family. Being so, I had never even entertained the thought that I might, one day, be the target of a stalker. But as it turns out, you don't have to be a typical pretty young lady to catch the eye of a stalker. I'm a habitual but casual Facebook user. I don't post a lot, but I do check my newsfeed often. One Saturday night, while doing a quick round before bed, I received a friend request. I accepted it without hesitation. Just about every friend request I receive gets accepted because I don't really ever post anything personal. As I mentioned, I have a very casual approach to social media. I did a quick glance at the profile that had friended me and saw that it was an obviously fake account. Not thinking much of it, I put my computer away and fell asleep. The next day, I was having lunch at a friend's house and had completely forgotten about the friend request from the night before. My phone buzzed, and I saw that I had a message from a coworker of mine, Maya. Although Maya and I worked together and had a few mutual friends outside of work, we didn't communicate much other than quick chats about work. I checked the message, assuming it was work-related. I guess looking back, you could say it was. The gist of her message was that the Facebook account that had friended me had also sent a request to Maya and had bombarded her with insults and accusations of being a whore, a slut, and every other name in the book. The person took it a step further by messaging Maya's husband, telling him she was cheating on him with a coworker. Maya wanted to know if I had any idea who the person was, since I was the only other person that had accepted the request. I explained to her that I accept every request I get, and I had no idea who this person could be. Not wanting to get involved in whatever was happening, I went and unfriended the profile in question. Maya then explained to me that she already had suspicions on who it was and just wanted to see if I could confirm. She believed it was Carrie. Rewind to a few weeks earlier, I had received a friend request from Carrie. It struck me as odd because although we worked in the same place, we had never met, never spoken, and hadn't even made eye contact or been within 20 feet of each other. We worked in different departments, but I walked past her every day to get to our lounge. That was about the furthest extent of our interactions. I had only learned her name from when she friended me on Facebook and I recognized the picture. I'm not even sure how she found out my name in the first place. Carrie had also friended my wife and subsequently shuffled through hundreds of posts and pictures spanning over many years, liking and commenting on several of them. She began interacting with my posts too, as if she knew us well. At work though, I continued walking by like usual, and still no interaction. Definitely odd, but I didn't look too far into it. Considering this behavior from a few weeks prior, Maya was certain that this mysterious Facebook account was Carrie. Whoever owned the account continued to harass Maya until she told her she knew who it was and that she was going to call the police. I thought that had to be the end of that, but boy, was I wrong. Over the next several weeks, I started getting even more random friend requests, all from girls looking to hook up with me. Obviously, I knew they were all fake, and for the most part, I ignored them. I also began getting notifications from my Google Plus and Facebook accounts about suspicious activity on my profile, most of which was failed login attempts. I remember one specific notification that my Facebook account had been logged in from somewhere unusual and asked whether it was me. It wasn't me, and I should have been more concerned, but for some reason, I didn't care and ignored that email. Even after that, I made the stupid decision to not bother changing my password. At the time, I considered all of these happenings to be random, isolated incidents. Since I didn't care all that much about my social media accounts, I didn't think it was important to pay attention to the notifications or requests I was getting. I had no valuable information on my account, and I didn't have any private or secretive messages I was trying to hide. What harm could anyone do, right? A few months passed when one day, my wife got a message from Carrie stating that she had bought a high-end video camera and was looking to start some amateur filming. She wanted to know if we would help her by letting her film our family for a day. Remembering what Maya had told me a few months ago, I was reluctant, but also wanted to give Carrie the benefit of the doubt, so we agreed to tell her we'd schedule a time for her when we weren't busy and left it at that. Once again, I had yet to actually meet Carrie. More weeks passed, and we had completely forgotten about scheduling the film shoot. Carrie messaged me about it, but I turned her down. The idea of agreeing initially didn't seem all too bad, but when it came down to actually setting up a day, I was pretty uncomfortable. That's when things got weird. She sent me several gifs of stick figures doing sexually suggestive motions and gyrations. Thinking it was strange and childish, I didn't respond, so she asked, "Funny, isn't it?" I immediately texted my wife and told her to log into my Facebook profile and take a look at these messages herself. In the meantime, not wanting to be rude, I agreed with Carrie that the gifts she had sent me were humorous, and then carried on the conversation. She proceeded to send me old photos from my abandoned MySpace account that I had completely forgotten about. This was around the time that MySpace was getting revamped and people lost a lot of memories they had stored in there. Somehow, though, she had dug mine up and decided to share what she found with me. I thought it was creepy, to say the least. Things escalated quickly from there. She began talking about her body and how she wasn't attractive, trying to bait me into complimenting her physically. I wouldn't say she's beautiful, but she's an attractive person, I guess. I didn't bite, though. Then she hit me with something out of the blue. She asked me about my penis, calling it my cock and suggesting it was probably really big. I decided that's where I would draw the line and stopped responding. My wife had been reading the whole time, and we were texting back and forth about how funny and weird this all was. I continued to go to work each day and still awkwardly walk past her department without ever actually meeting her. I really didn't want to strike up a conversation after that whole ordeal. Carrie messaged me one final time asking for a favor. Maya had blocked her profile, and Carrie apparently suspected that she was saying bad stuff about her publicly, so she wanted me to go and check Maya's profile to confirm. I told her I was not about to stalk Maya for her, and that was that. Just between us, though, I did check, and no, Maya didn't care enough to waste her time talking about Carrie. Around this time, my wife got a text from an unknown number. The person knew her name, but was trying to remain anonymous, and was also trying to flirt with her. We were with a bunch of friends at the time, and we all thought it would be funny if we flirted back with this person at the same time to annoy them. Once again, I never thought there was a connection between any of these weird incidences. Carrie eventually quit work, and I never saw her again, but I continued to get suspicious activity notifications and fake friend requests that I stupidly decided to write off. I had all but forgotten about Carrie. Then, I'd say over a year later, I got a bomb from my wife. A good friend of ours texted her to tell her I was sending her very inappropriate messages on Facebook. I had been busy running errands all day and hadn't really checked Facebook in a while. When I got home, I found that my password had been changed. I was finally able to log back in and saw that all of my messages had been cleared. There was no way for me to know the extent of what had happened until I started hearing from even more people that I was being very suggestive and nasty to them. The worst part was that these weren't even random women on my friends list that were targeted. These were women that were close to me, good friends, my wife's sisters, my friends' wives. These messages weren't holding back either. Apparently, they went all out in graphic detail about what I wanted to do to them. I felt completely violated and humiliated. I couldn't even begin to imagine how these women felt. My wife and I are really close to our families and friends, and every other week or so we'll all get together to drink, barbecue, and watch movies or sports and hang out. I was worried about how these messages might affect our social life, but everyone said they understood what happened and that they knew it wasn't me. Deep inside, though, I could see that there was a possibility that they still potentially thought it was me. Over time, more and more of them stopped coming over, to the point where my home started to feel empty. I confided in my wife about how I felt that they may still think those messages were for me, and she rebutted that I was just being paranoid. She argued that her friends were just busy with their lives, and they'd eventually come over when they were free again. It was soon after this that I learned someone had created a Facebook account using my name and picture, and had used it to continue harassing the same woman. My worst fear was coming true. One of these women posted a screenshot of the conversation with my fake profile on her Facebook. She commented that it could really be me because the mysterious person was using the same vocabulary as I do, and that person knew all my friends and family extensively. My heart instantly shattered after reading that. I quit checking Facebook for the longest time and fell into what I would call a mild depression. I felt miserable. I told my wife that I just wanted to disappear, and that I was even strongly considering quitting my job of 7 years and moving away to start anew. I know now that I was being a bit dramatic and irrational, and thankfully, my wife stayed strong for me through it all. I felt like I needed to defend my honor, and I started gathering alibis of times, people, and places I was around when those messages were sent. Seeing this, my wife pretty brutally told me that she couldn't believe I was weak enough to let a no-life dumbass on Facebook put me down and make me feel this way. It was true. I am and always have been a very mentally strong person. I always look at the best in bad situations, but for some reason, this was affecting me differently. I can't explain why, but I felt an extreme guilt and shame for something I didn't even do. Without my wife's support bringing me back to reality, I don't know what I would have done. We advised our friends to just ignore the person, and eventually everything stopped. From time to time, I still get a random friend request, but I don't accept them anymore. I don't have any proof that this was all Carrie's work, but it just so happened to occur during a time when she injected herself into my life, and eventually stopped after she left it. My friends have started coming over again regularly, but it hasn't felt the same for me ever since then. I don't know if it's them or if it's just in my head. I guess I can't get over the embarrassment that these women who are so important to me felt harassed and violated by something that came from my life. My wife and I came to the conclusion that Carrie just reveled in the misery of others. After tormenting Maya and realizing she couldn't get her way there, she targeted me, trying to ruin my marriage and distance me from my friends, for no other reason than the fact that she enjoyed doing so. I'm sure the only reason she's left me alone is that she's found a new victim to harass. This happened a while back when I was around 13 or 14 years old and had just made my first Facebook account. I had a huge crush on this boy who used to be my neighbor and had just moved away from my street. I was super sad that I wouldn't see him again, until a beautiful surprise one night when I opened my Facebook account and saw a friend request from him. My heart was racing, and I was ecstatic. We talked for a bit, but nothing too interesting happened at the time. We would have these casual conversations most nights, but one night, it got a bit scary. Out of nowhere, he started claiming that he wasn't actually my crush, but was someone who had hacked his account and knew a lot about me. He knew my entire name, which wasn't written on my Facebook profile, so I'm not sure how he found out. I used an abbreviated version of my first and last names, and it wasn't very easy to guess from that. I had been talking to my crush about how we used to be neighbors on his old street, so this person also knew where I lived. The creep started threatening me about how he would come and get me at my house because I was young and beautiful, and his wife was getting old and wasn't satisfying him anymore. As a young teenager, I had no idea what to do. I was completely freaked out, shaking in my desk chair, staring at the conversation. I thought that maybe my crush was just messing with me, since he did kind of have a weird jokester personality. I asked him to send me a picture of himself to see, and he sent me a picture within seconds that had clearly been taken quickly since it was so blurry. I could see in the picture that the mysterious messenger was an ugly, old, skinny man who looked like he was on drugs. I was panicking. All I could think about was how my mother had warned me that I shouldn't be making social media accounts at this age, but in my stubborn young tendencies, I didn't listen. I was scared, but I didn't want to tell my mom because I knew she'd be horribly upset with me. It was around 1 a.m., and I didn't know what to do, so I just ended up blocking the account and going to bed, trying to move on and telling myself he was probably just trying to freak me out. I was wrong, though. About an hour later, I received a call on my cell phone from an unknown number. I picked it up, and it was the man from the messages. He said he had warned me that he knew a lot about me and that we should talk. I hung up. I was on the verge of a panic attack and ran to wake my mother up and told her everything. She told me to print out the conversations and that she would take care of it in the morning. I went to school like normal the next day, and my mom stayed behind to work from home. When I came back later in the afternoon, my mom told me that the creep had rang our doorbell around lunchtime, knocking on the door incessantly. She wrote down the plate number of the van he had left right in front of our house while he was ringing the bell and called the police. Since he had been so careless, they caught him pretty quickly. It turned out he was a wanted sex offender, charged with multiple infractions involving minors. I deleted my Facebook after this, and I still don't have one to this day. I now keep all of my social media extremely private, since you never know who could be on the other end of a message. This story is from about 5 years ago, when I was 18. I had decided to take a break from my long-term high school boyfriend after graduation. He was 2 years older than me and a total control freak, and I just wanted some freedom in my life. I was hanging out with my friend Jenna most of the time, not doing much other than smoking weed and spending time with our friends. I'm a petite blonde, and not to sound overly confident, but I was looking pretty good back then. Mostly because I was in shape and dressed well, but I'm a lazy mom now. I was pretty used to getting the random creepy Facebook messages from strangers from time to time. One day, when Jenna and I were at a friend Tommy's house, I saw that I had received a Facebook message from a guy named Chadley, who was apparently an Abercrombie & Fitch model, according to the job title on his profile. Let me tell you, this man was in top physical shape, like one of those guys that you would see standing outside the stores with his shirt off. Not my type at all, but I wasn't just going to ignore a message from a hot guy. His message to me said, "Hey, you look familiar. Have we met before?" It was a slightly different approach than the other men I was used to, who always came on way too strong at first. I wasn't looking for a boyfriend or even to talk to any new guys at the time, but I guess I was just happy to get some attention to boost my self-esteem after my breakup. I messaged him back saying that I don't think I've ever met him, but he claimed he must have seen me at a party or something. He said I was gorgeous, so he just had to message me. I gladly accepted the compliment. We chatted about what schools we went to, our exes, and so on. I was really interested in cars at the time since my whole family works in the industry, so we started talking about what our dream cars would be. He seemed nice and pretty normal at first. Eventually, he asked me to come hang out at his house. He lived in a very upscale neighborhood, so I thought, why the heck not? It's not like I was doing anything else productive with my time. I headed over to his place around 8 p.m. on a cold, wintry evening. As soon as I arrived, he greeted me at the door and led me into what looked like an office. Thankfully, he was just as good-looking in person as he was in his pictures. Once we were inside, he pulled up his computer and literally already had a YouTube search of fast cars queued up. This happened so quickly that the whole experience came off as really weird. He was just showing me videos of cars going really fast, and I wasn't exactly sure how to react. I pretended to be amused by the video, and after a while he asked me if I wanted to watch a movie with him. I accepted, and he put in some movie starring Nicolas Cage. Just the whole vibe was weird, but I guess I just ignored it because of how good-looking he was. When the night was over, I said goodbye and left, promising to link up again soon. He texted me not even seconds after I walked out the door, asking me to text him when I got home. I thought it was weird, but messaged him when I got back to wish him a good night anyway. He insisted on keeping up the conversation though, asking me what I was doing the next day and if I wanted to go out to eat. Wanting to be polite, I agreed. Once again, I headed over to his house later in the evening, and we got in his beat-up Honda and drove to an Outback nearby. While we waited for a table, he kept looking at his phone like he was waiting for something instead of talking to me. Finally, it lit up as he got a call from a friend. "Hello? Yeah, man, I can't talk about football right now. I'm on a date. Yeah, the girl I was telling you about. Okay, I'll call you back later." Then he quickly hung up. I wasn't sure what to make of it. It was almost like he had planned the whole phone call for some reason. Still getting weird vibes from him, I proceeded with the date. Something about him was just off though, and it felt like he was trying to move way too fast. All I could think of was going home and not talking to him anymore. He just wasn't my type. Once we got back to his house, he asked me to come inside, but I awkwardly tried to tell him I needed to get home since it was late. He looked upset. "Just come in for a second. I just want to show you something cool." I should have taken this as a red flag, but my young self was down for whatever, so I just said, "Sure, fine," and followed him in. The moment we walked through the door, we were instantly greeted by his mom and dad, almost like they had been standing on the other side of the door waiting for me. "Oh, hi Chadley, is this the girl you keep talking about?" his mom said. What the fuck? I had literally met him 2 days ago, and we only hung out twice. He was already talking to his mom about me. "Yeah, this is her. She's great." His dad responded cheerfully that he would leave us alone, but that we should check out Chadley's swimming pictures on the mantle since he was such an awesome swimmer. I awkwardly but politely told them it was nice to meet them, trying to figure out how I was going to get out of there as Chadley continued talking my ear off. He rambled on and on about how he wanted to be in the FBI when he graduated, and then wanted to become an Abercrombie & Fitch model, like on the shopping bags. He literally sounded like a child. I apologized in the middle of his speech and told him I had to leave. He walked me out to his car and stood there, clearly expecting a kiss, but I quickly jumped into my Jeep and waved goodbye and started to back out. He was just an odd guy, and I wasn't all that interested no matter how handsome he was. So that's the backstory, but here's where it gets weird. For the next few days, I kept getting constant texts from Chadley. Every day it started with a simple "hey," which I would respond to with a one-word response to be polite. I don't know why I even cared. I'm not even that friendly, but I think I was worried that if I made Chadley upset, he would make a big scene and my psycho ex-boyfriend would find out that I had moved on. Thankfully, I was going to Florida that week and had a legitimate excuse as to why I couldn't see him. Even still, every day during my trip, he would continue messaging me with "hey." My responses kept getting shorter and less frequent until I stopped responding altogether. But that didn't stop Chadley. He kept texting me every single day for about 2 months after I stopped responding to him. Eventually, I just got annoyed and blocked his number. That's when I started getting phone calls. Calls from random numbers, calls from private numbers, non-stop calls at all hours of the day. I picked up a few times, but there was never anyone there. Then I would get another call and pick up and would hear a man in the background. I knew it was Chadley, so I stopped answering my phone. Then I started getting Facebook messages from him again. "Hey." That's all they would ever say. Repeatedly. "Hey, hey, hey," over and over again. I was so annoyed, so I blocked him on there as well. I figured that would be the last I would hear from him, but I eventually found out that I was wrong. A whole 2 years later, I got involved with another guy, who I'm still with today, and things were going great. One day, I got a message on Facebook while I was at work from a man named Chadley. I figured there was no way it was the same guy, so I opened it. "Hey stranger, how have you been?" Of course, I didn't respond. Before I could even block him though, he started insulting me and calling me a bitch for not responding. Right away, I got a text on my phone. Just like before, it simply said, "hey," even though he had just freaked out at me on Facebook a matter of seconds before that. I texted him back, "Take a hint, bro, leave me the fuck alone." I have no idea what his response was because I blocked him immediately afterwards. Thankfully, that was the end of my run-ins with Chadley, but it's not the end of the story. I was hanging out with my friend Claire one day, and she had her Facebook Messenger pulled up, showing me a message an ex of hers had sent her when I saw Chadley in her inbox. And guess what he had said to her? "Hey, you look familiar. Have we met before?" I asked her about it, and she told me that he had kept trying to get her to come over, and she declined because he wasn't her type. About a year later, I got a job as a general manager for a fine dining restaurant. I recognized one of my employees as Chadley's ex-girlfriend's sister. Apparently, Chadley had met her sister on Facebook after asking, "Hey, you look familiar. Have we met before?" His sister agreed to go on a date with him, and after about a month, he had already become obsessive. Apparently, Chadley stalked her for years after and ended up tracking her down at her new boyfriend's house and started an altercation. I think I'm in the clear now, but after hearing all these similar accounts, I really hope I just never hear from him again.